I'll make myself comfortable. Hi, Esther. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so
Well,
excited to be part of this conference. Thank you.
Esther, my first question to you is, I've met you 3 years ago, I think, when you visited Vilnius at Login Conference presenting your book on Moonshots in education. What was your motivation to write the book? Where did it start, and how do you feel about it now?
My motivation to write the book was to explain to many people around the world what motivates students, why they want to learn, and what learning really is. Because a lot of people think that learning is memorizing a book or following the teacher and memorize what the teacher said. But that is not learning. That is memorizing. And the studies show that after 2 weeks, students only remember 32%. So if you just memorize, you don't really understand how to do something. And also, you're not very excited about what it is that you might have learned. So my program has been very successful. This is actually the 40th year, and it's the largest media program in the United States. And what I did was use media, journalism, and magazines, newspapers, television, as projects to get kids involved in learning. And so it's the intersection of all the different subject matters in the school system. So kids need to be able to think, and they need to be able to use math, science, social studies, English, language, whatever, in order to be an effective journalist and in order to be able to produce a magazine or a newspaper or write articles for those. And so I was trying to get out to the world how effective this system is so they could do it too. Because I, as a teacher, I felt supported by technology. So I worked less. I didn't have to work so hard. And my students loved it and they did better. So I said, why don't I try to help other people do the same thing?
Yeah, and actually, Esther, with your project and with your ideas, you've traveled all around the world, talking in the largest educational technology conferences. Have you noticed any patterns in other countries? Are we all that different when it comes to problems in educational system? Or maybe we have so much in common that we should just copy each other and learn from each other?
Well, it's a great question. Unfortunately, we're all in the same situation. And that's because we, since the beginning of the 20th century, it was, I think, 1893, we decided that learning had to be in subject matter. So there were 10 major subjects, and everybody in the world, they copied each other. And then we also have a testing system that's based on everybody learning in these silos, in these separate subject areas. So it's a problem internationally, which is one of the reasons why I speak in a lot of different countries all over the world. It's because the same problem exists. We have the wrong information, that the teacher is the main source of information. The teacher knows it all. But the teacher actually should be a facilitator. Like your previous speaker said, the teacher should be a facilitator because you, me, everybody, we can learn online. I mean, as a matter of fact, most people learn from their phones. And in many countries, it's crazy. The phone is banned in schools. And I ask, how could that be? How can they ban the device where people learn the most? So I think we need, it's a worldwide problem. So it's not just in Lithuania. In fact, I think Lithuania is ahead. You know, I went to that login conference. I was very impressed with that and with the way the whole thing was organized and the way people were thinking. I think you have an advantage being a smaller country. You can actually do it and you can set a role model for the whole world. And that's what I think, that's why I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Esther. And actually, what I love when you talk about learning in many in your talks is the word that we don't use that much here. It's trust. And I have a saying that creativity is trust in advance. And in one of your last interviews, you said, how can you learn to be creative by reading about a book about it? You have to take a risk. And do you believe that risk-taking requires trust? And how do we actually take those risks?
So you're 100% right. Creativity requires you to take a risk. You have to be vulnerable. You're trying something new. It's a new path that other people might have not even thought about. And in order to be effective, you have to feel like it's okay to fail. Being able to fail and not have some negative consequence is going to promote risk-taking. It's going to promote creativity. And I think your previous speaker also said, we're all teaching to the test. And so what that does is it cuts out creativity because we all want to get the answer right. And sometimes those answers that are called right are actually not right, but we're memorizing them as right. So then that doesn't give us any opportunity for creativity. So we've got to cut back on the national testing. And and we need to trust. My new book, How to Raise Successful People, has an acronym in the book. The way I organized it, it's TRIC. And TRIC stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. So you give people trust, sorry, you respect their ideas. I mean, some of these ideas are really crazy, but they work out. You give them independence, you collaborate instead of dictate, and you treat them with kindness. Kindness goes such a long way. It is really unbelievable. I mean, people may forget what you said and forget what you did, but they'll never forget your kindness.
I really live by this rule of people remembering how you make them feel, and you made me feel very interested in education after we met at Login, and you actually carry a very romantic title, Godmother of Silicon Valley. What does it actually mean to you personally? Not for headlines, but to you personally.
Well, it's a real honor for me personally to have a title like that. And I think what it's done, and the reason I think I have this title is that I have been an advisor to many startups and many startups that have been highly successful. And one of the startups that was involved with at the very beginning in 1999 through my daughter, Susan, was Google. And Google, the TRIC philosophy it's embedded in the Google philosophy. They hire the best people they can find. They trust and respect them, give them a lot of independence. The whole company is based on collaboration and kindness. They feed them, they make sure they have the cleaning and the haircut and the doctor. They take care of the human being. So that is, and then other companies in Silicon Valley have copied this, which I'm very happy to say. And there's a company in Germany that is doing this now, a big company, Siemens. Siemens just changed their philosophy so that they're no longer micromanaging people. They're only focused on the outcome and collaboration and allowing people to be trusted. And they wrote a sentence which actually said, trust is the most important part. So it's traveling around the world. Hopefully more companies will do that and more people.
I was actually, you dropped into my next question so perfectly because I really wanted to ask, what do you think education systems or education sector could steal from technology industry after watching closely two global giants, Google and YouTube, growing up from garage ideas to successful companies?
So I think what they can model is that the way they treat their employees. I mean, they're so caring. Just for example, I mean, Google gave their employees, a day off just for no reason, just because they were, we in California here have been suffering from the fires and the smoke, and people have still been working at home. You can't go outside because the air is so polluted. But they just said, take a day off. And then YouTube is also very caring. My daughter, Susan, one of the things that I'm so proud of what she did was she set up daycare centers within Google and YouTube so that young mothers can feel confident about going to work, having good daycare for their children. And then also she set up, it's the first in the United States by a big company, 6 months of maternity leave, paid 100%. So I think also in Lithuania, you might already have that, but here in the US, this was a new thing. And so I think these are actions that show the company cares about their employees.
And what about failure? To me, it feels watching technology industry grow in the past 10 years, it feels that learning and failure is in the DNA of the industry. It's like failing is equal to success. Failing means you're learning, means you're moving, and failure means you're innovating. Why are we so afraid of failure in our educational systems?
Well, I think it's built into the culture of many countries, and particularly in some Asian countries, failure is considered, it's so bad that people commit suicide. So, for example, in Korea, this is a problem in the school system. There's other countries where being a failure or just failing a class or getting a bad grade is considered tragic. And so I think that this thought, this culture, this way of thinking about failure really governs our behaviors. Our beliefs and what we think is true governs the way that we behave. And a lot of these beliefs are embedded in childhood. And that's one of the reasons why in my new book, I talk about the importance of childhood. I say, change your parenting, change the world, because kids grow up being afraid to make a mistake. And, their ideas could change the world if we give them an opportunity to be respected and to be trusted. So, I'm kind of passionate about that. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so involved in working with parents and working with schools and so forth. My students just started a new company, and it's by kids for kids, and it's learning by kids for kids. It's called track.app. And honestly, I'm so impressed and proud of them for doing something like this. They're trying to help other kids in the world be empowered.
I was just about to congratulate you on the new launch. I'm very curious to follow where Tracked App will go next. And when you mention childhood, I feel as a parent, it's a very sensitive topic. And thinking globally, we will see 100 million new school kids joining educational system in the next 10 years. And when I think about it, I believe it's a huge and massive growth. And do you have ideas or insights? How do we change the narrative that we lived for the past century after the Industrial Revolution, from education to many and to education and where we create learning opportunities to everyone? And what do you believe is the role of technology in it?
It is learning opportunities for everyone, every child on the planet, all those kids, 100 million that you said. Everybody should have the opportunity to learn and to live a life, a productive life where they can also make everybody else's life better. We work together as a team. I think that the best thing that we can do is to, one of the things that we're trying to do here in Lithuania right now today is to give people an opportunity to learn without being so afraid of failure, without being afraid that if you take a test and you fail, that that's pretty much the end of your life. We have to stop thinking that way. And every child today, there are apps out there. I mean, I was just seeing what the last speaker talked about on brilliant.org and Bright Bites and all of those. You can learn on your phone. Today, right now, there are more cell phones in the world than human beings. More cell phones. So let's teach people how to use those in order to learn, and especially kids. I mean, a cell phone for them is a bigger device in a small hand. And so they can use those, they can use iPads or tablets or whatever. And you don't have to be, the teacher doesn't have to know it all. All you have to be, you're kind of like a guide. You are guiding the students to helping them get the information. Yes, we can still have tests. Yes, we can still do that, but they shouldn't be punitive. They should be guides for you so that you know what you personally don't understand, and that when the teacher should know, oh, this student needs a little bit more work in this area, or needs a little bit more work in that area. So that is the way that I think will make the biggest difference. Technology can really help make the world a better place.
And how do we help those teachers? Because I can feel that teachers are there for the kids. They're doing their best most of the time. They're following the rules that the system's created, and often they're scrutinized for not being good enough while they don't have a support system. They don't have the Google around them. They don't have the YouTube. They need the system where they're supported, trusted, where they're cared for and met with kindness. Is maybe this could be the first thing to do, is actually looking at teachers as Google or YouTube employees, because my saying is that a good teacher in a few years will be as difficult to find as a software developer. So because their skills are upgrading, they can travel the world. With distant learning, they can teach a kid everywhere, and we will be fighting for them because the numbers of teachers are declining, and the number of kids are growing. So what do you feel would be the best thing we could do to support our teachers?
Well, number one thing we can do to support our teachers is to stop grading them or stop evaluating them based on the students' test scores. That's what we're doing right now. So worldwide, if the students don't do really well on tests, then teachers are treated poorly. So teachers are afraid to do anything that is not directed by the principal or by the superintendent. And so we need to give teachers more autonomy in the classroom. It's more like the Finnish system, Finland. The teachers, you hire smart teachers and you give them control in the classroom to allow their students to have some creativity, to allow their students to work on projects that they care about. So the Finnish system isn't perfect, but it's better than some of the other systems. And teachers, it's true about what you say about teachers. You know, so many teachers that I know have quit right now in this pandemic, and they don't want to teach in this way. And so we need to make the profession more attractive by trusting these people and respecting them and paying them a good salary. So a lot of people in the US, the salary is so low, people can't believe it. Some teachers have to work 2 jobs in order to make it work. So I think the power lies with the people. They have to put pressure on their school system to trust the teachers and to respect their ideas.
Totally agree with you, Esther, because when you think from a neuroscience perspective, if a teacher doesn't feel autonomy, if a teacher doesn't feel supported, if a teacher doesn't feel good enough to learn, to risk, to do new things, how can he or she give those skills to a kid? It sounds impossible. And when you mentioned the pandemic and teachers leaving schools, it's very, very sad to hear. Though, do you believe the current pandemic is a window of opportunity, or it's actually a step back with educators globally surviving?
So that's a great question. I personally think it's a window of opportunity. It's a window of opportunity for all of us to see that kids can be more self-directed in their learning. Kids can learn more effectively independently. So the Zoom classes that are an hour lecture with 5 minutes of direct instructions on homework, those classes are ineffective. We need to give kids an opportunity to work collaboratively on some project that they are interested in that might be connected to the subject that the teacher is teaching. No, we cannot continue this way. And we've been trying for years to give students more autonomy, more flexibility, and this is the opportunity. This is it. So pandemic has created a lot of problems for all of us, but it's also opened this opportunity up. And I'm very excited about that.
Fantastic. And we actually have a question from Slido, which will give us a minute's rest from the tough topics of education. And what, Esther, Vidunas asks, what inspires you?
Well, the main thing that inspires me is really being able to give these ideas to other people, because I'll tell you, there is nothing as gratifying in the world as seeing your students succeed. You know, to see a child succeed and see them excited about learning. I'll tell you, it's worth $1 million. It's worth everything. So that's why I do this, and that's why it excites me, because I'm trying to help other people do it too. And when they figure out how important it is and how great it is, they do it too.
And we also have another question from Ashra, which is, I guess, a very sensitive subject to most of the parents and anyone who's active technology user, I'd say, is what about screen times? I'll just read out the question so I'm not confusing it. What about screen time limitations for kids? What would your advice be? How do you balance the need to learn digitally and to actually limit the screen time for kids? Do you have advices?
So I'll tell you, when parents are talking about screen time, they're talking about games. And they are not talking about learning. They're not talking about the Zoom time. They're talking about, I don't want you playing any more games. And so my most effective way of dealing with this is, first of all, to talk to kids and explain to them why, and then collaborate with them on setting rules. You know, honestly, kids are really smart and they want to do the right thing. And they don't like to be bossed around and told what to do, especially if they don't understand why. And so that's what I did with my grandchildren. And they loved gaming. And so the question was, how much time do you think you should be gaming? Let's look at the number of hours in the day. When it was collaborative, they came up with rules and they agreed on something, and then they self-monitor. It's an opportunity for you to allow your kids to self-monitor. The reason that they are not following the rules is they're testing you. They want to see how far they can get. And so if there's no rules to test, they're going to cooperate. So that's what I think. It's called collaboration. Don't dictate, collaborate.
And Esther, where does your feeling or intuition or knowledge about trust comes? Is it from your parenting, your education? How, how does it? How do you feel so strongly about it? How do you, even when educating your grandchildren and trusting them so deeply as human beings, is it your education, or is it something you brought back, you got as a present from your parents?
You know, actually, it's something that it's both, or I should say it's all of that. But, you know, I basically realized when I was about 10 years old, the story's in the book, we don't have time today for me to do that. But I realized that the most important thing that I could do to make sure that I lived and that I had a successful life was to be informed, to be educated. And then I also realized that trust, if people trusted me, I felt good about myself. And I think that that thing just, it continued. That was the beginning of it. But then in my classes, it was kind of shocking for me to realize that I could have huge classes, like 70 kids in one class, and every kid would be outstanding. And how could that be? And it was because I trusted them to help each other reach a certain level, a standard that I had set. And they all, it was kind of amazing. The first few years I did this, it was a little bit risky because I was doing this in the 1980s when the main way of teaching was direct instruction, students sitting in rows, teacher talking, students not talking. So I had some problems back then. The school system thought they called me a maverick, but it worked. I mean, the reason I was so successful is because the program kept growing all the time. All the parents loved it. And so I have to thank the parents in Palo Alto because they were always very supportive.
And what do you see, how do you see the role of technology in the modern classroom? Is it just a tool, or is it another tool for learning, or is it essential when it comes to kids living in the digital age?
I think it's essential for kids living in a digital age. Did you ever see what happens to an adult who loses their phone? Honestly, you know, we all need those phones. And so I think kids starting around 8, once they learn to read, you know, and write, I think phones are very important. And the technology supports that teacher. It supports those students. If you use it correctly, if you don't just spend all your day online, you know, playing with Roblox or doing silly things, you know, you can really learn a lot. I mean, I'm on my computer most of the day and I'm interacting with other people. I do newsletters and blog posts, and here I am doing this conference, you know, from California all the way to Lithuania. You know, I think that technology, you know, how can we exist without it? How would our pandemic be? How would we survive this without technology? I don't know. I don't think we would.
And we have a question from the audience. Eines?
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you about techniques that you were mentioning in terms of trust and others. from your point of view and experience, you know, when you were saying you were, teaching kids in Palo Alto, but maybe the classroom was specific, right? Maybe the parents, the environment that you were in was quite favorable to learning. What do you do in more problematic areas? You know, if you have a school where kids are not willing to learn, or there is, you know, a real struggle in terms of in their families, and so the whole environment is not that favorable to learning. Do these sort of techniques apply, and have you seen them work in other environments that are more hostile to learning or, you know, more problematic? Thank you.
So yes, I have seen them work in other environments. You know, I don't know a kid anywhere in the world who wants to do it wrong. Not a single one. They all want to do it right. And the reason that there's a struggle with a lot of these kids to learn is they don't know why they're learning. There's no explanation. The reason why is because I told you so. There's a test on Friday. And that's not enough. You know, so you want to give kids real world application of what they're learning. And so one of my good friends in today is Mae Musk, Elon Musk's mother. And I just want you to know her methods of parenting were very similar to mine. She gave her kids a lot of trust and respect. As a matter of fact, at the age of 8, they had specific duties they were doing to help her with her business. And, you know, this gives a child a sense of, oh, my parent believes in me. They know I can do it because they said that I should be able to do it. And Elon hated school. He did really poorly. And why did he do so poorly? Because he was this strong-willed, smart kid who said, I'm not going to do this stuff if I don't know why. And there was never any why. And so kids in all those classes, I've taught kids in those classes, low-income classes, and I can tell you that kid will do everything if they believe that you respect them. They never want to lose your respect. And so I think we start out in a way as teachers where we're threatening them. If you don't do this now, you know, you're gonna whatever. And so I would change your strategy.
Fantastic, Esther. And this is the shout out to my mom. Mom, thank you for the trust and being patient with always answering my whys, because I was also the kid who just couldn't understand why the school is so unopen to questions. I just couldn't get it. And my final and the most important question is, I'm a parent of 3, and I'm a citizen of Lithuania, and we are sitting in presidential files. If we want to have the next Bill Gates or Susan Wojcicki growing up in Lithuania, how do we inject learning fever into our educational system?
You know, kids are innately interested. They are curious right away. So you want to give them that opportunity to develop that curiosity, and in the schools, give them more control of their learning. I say, make the student CEO of their learning. And that will help. Okay, you can have 50% of the time where the teacher is directing, and the other 50% of the time, let the student direct, give them some freedom, opportunity to breathe, to do things that they care about. Who knows what they might find interesting? You know, one of my daughter's closest friends loved insects, and she grew up to be, fortunately, somebody who's a specialist, a biologist who specializes in insects. You know, if her parents would have smashed that interest, what would have happened? So, you know, all of our children are an opportunity for them to help and help the world and be the best they can be. We have to support them. They're like flowers, you know, you have to nurture them so they grow up to be as beautiful as they can be. And don't tell them what to be, just support what they think is important. And who knows, if they don't like it, if for some reason it doesn't work out, they will figure it out themselves too. You know, they're not dumb.
Esther, thank you very much for your vision, for your effort, for your work, and for being a big supporter and a fan of Lithuania. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for including me. And I hope to come back to Lithuania as soon as this pandemic is over.